Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the grand finals of the Nordic Championship Hearthstone section. We have Sweden going up against Norway. We have Deathboose versus Thomerio. And joining me, give me the pleasure of casting alongside you is my old friend Lothar.
Oh, how cute. Thank you very much. But I'm still like, you know what I'm thinking about? I'm not thinking about what will be going on in a few seconds, and I'm still thinking, will there be a shaman in the finals?
It's tough to say.
We talk about a lot about the fact that so many people are banning shaman, right? And even if in Conquest, not banning shaman is not as punishing as usually in less hero standing, because you can't be swept by a shaman 3-0. But still, losing just a one game to the best class in the game feels bad, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's generally in Conquest, when you see Shaman get left up, it's very specific decks where you've teched in Baron Geddon to everything. You're running Freeze Mage, you're running aggressive Hunters sometimes, that kind of thing. And it's not really a lineup that we're seeing from either of these players. We did see a Shaman in the last series, but the player who chose to leave up the Shaman was Spartacus, who has been eliminated. So I would imagine we're going to go back to a double Shaman ban here, but we will wait and see. And there you go. There is the underdog, the man that was very clearly nervous the series, and actually probably safe to say a little bit nervous while he was up here being interviewed as well. You could see that on his face, but he's now going to need to put that aside because there's so much at stake here. There's the pride of his nation. There's that beautiful trophy that you just had a look at, and there's that 3,000 euros first prize. He triples his money from here, going from second to first.
From second to first, I think it's not about the money now. When you're in the final, you just want to win to have the Champions title, right? I actually like to point it out that for most players, having the champion title is way more valuable than having just some money in the pocket, right? The money will be spent, probably, you know, maybe you will do something with the money, but at the same time, the title will always be with you. You always have it on the shelf in the home, or you have some bragging rights, right? You can always say, I won the Nordic Championships. And that's, you know, finals from 4 different countries is not something to scoff on, right? So I think it's a very important match for both of them, but especially for Thomerio. Because as we talk with him, he's the new guy. He doesn't play tournaments. I think this is actually his first tournament in general. And that makes a huge difference for him.
Yeah, it really does. You spoke about, you know, the long-term, the lasting, the memory value, the legacy value of winning that trophy. But for someone who's perhaps just looking to maybe get a head start in a esports career, in a Hearthstone career long time, winning that trophy might just immediately have better monetary value than that 3,000 euros you put in your pocket, just in terms of your increased exposure, your greater social media reach. If you're going to start streaming as the Nordic champion, that's a lot better than streaming just as off your own back as someone that nobody knows. So straight away, having a huge title like this to put to your name is such a big deal. And Thomerio has just done incredibly well, even to get to this position for someone that doesn't have tournament experience. To even get to this spot all the way into the grand finals is a massive achievement. But now he has one big challenge left up against him in perhaps the favorite at the beginning of the day to win the whole thing. Deathboose, who we were talking about, has an incredibly impressive 76% competitive win rate over the course of 2016.
Let's see if it will go up or down after this match, because it will be a lose or die for both of them. And win or die, basically, sorry. That will be a bad outcome, lose-lose situation. Let's see how Thomerio will be actually doing now in this match, because he was pretty shaken up during the semi-final. And if he will just maintain his composure here in the final, I feel he has a good chance of winning the final. He was playing really well in those 2 first games, right? But then kind of went downhill. So let's hope that this won't be the case here, unless he will still go 2-0 and will be in the same exact position as it was before.
Yeah, the important thing is that he identified the mistakes, right? As soon as he got up here, we started talking about the nerves. He knew immediately what we were talking about. He said, yeah, this turn, they were bad. We said, yep, absolutely agree with you. They were bad. But, you know, no one plays Hearthstone perfectly. And if you look at the very, very best players, if you follow some of them on Twitter, you'll see them make mistakes in big tournaments and immediately go to Twitter and go, oh, damn, that turn where I did X was so bad. They're good enough to identify straight away when they make mistakes after the fact very, very quickly. Importantly, Thomerio was able to do the same thing. So hopefully he's now able to put it right going into this grand finals. Easily, we can say, the most important game of Hearthstone he's ever played.
Yeah, that's true. Some of the players even like to review entire games of the complicated turns on stream, or maybe even show it graphically on their social media and talk about the options, talk about why that was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't visible at the first sight, right? But that's something that you have to take out of every single game you play, because if you just blame it on RNG every single time, you will not improve. So definitely, that's a good mindset to have when it comes to the playing card games. We see some fans staring us on camera.
Look like the Swedish representative are out in force. No great surprise, of course. Sweden, the home favorite going into this, and Deathboose is still flying the flag, both figuratively and literally for them, as he is draped in the Swedish colors right now, sat in his seat as he was for his opening round, having vanquished Janetski, the Finnish representative, to get to where he stands. He now has Norway stood in front of him in the finals to take this title, or at least the Hearthstone section of it, down for the home team for Sweden.
Yep, and that's actually, it doesn't feel this way, especially if someone just tunes into this tournament. But those guys had to win their own event in their own country to get here to this point. It's only 3 games here at Dreamhack Winter 2016, but they played, I'm guessing, something around 10 games before going here. So that's actually there was a huge road behind them to go to the point where they play in the grand finals of the Nordic Championships.
Yeah, and as we've mentioned previously, some of the representatives that these countries have available to them are some of the biggest names in the game. You look at, Oskaka from Sweden, Orange from Sweden, Hoy, Crane, Tessin from Denmark, all guys that have had huge impacts in major events over the course of 2016.
Savage from Finland.
Savage from Finland, woo! And yeah, so some of these Scandinavian players are a real force in the, some of these Nordic players, sorry, are a huge force in the game as a whole. So the fact that these are the representatives we're looking at from those regions means that they've had to battle their way through a bracket filled with a huge number of those players. Probably not Savitz, though.
Yeah, I was just making a joke. Try to be funny from time to time. Deathboose is in the zone, I think. Maybe not anymore. Now he's looking around. Aha, time's up. It means we'll be starting the game, I'm guessing. Well,
he's not sure. I think he wants to start this game as badly as we do. He's looking around. He's waiting for confirmation. I think the time for talk may very nearly be over, Lothar. At least I hope so.
What classes will be seeing in the first game? What do you think?
Thomerio at least has Druid, Warrior, Shaman, and the Zoo Warlock available to him. We didn't see Warrior. Warrior was banned out for him in the previous series, but he did tell us that it was the Warrior that got banned when we spoke to him very quickly. And any illusions of a fast series here, looks like they're going straight out the window, because we are going to open this up with a Warrior mirror, one of the Warriors at least we've seen already. And there is a Sogoth the Slitherer in Deathboose's list. Thomerio here as well. The Slam could lean towards a slightly more tempo-based list, but there's the shield block as well, which means we are looking at a good old-fashioned control Warrior mirror here.
Yep, that's correct. So buckle up. This will take a while. Oh, it's a cartoon Warrior.
Interesting. And there you see it is all on the line. That is what they're playing for. The beautiful Nordic Championship Hearthstone trophy, as well as the pride of their respective regions. And this is Cthulhu Warrior, as you mentioned. And Cthulhu Warrior, really, out of all the Warrior mirrors, you want to be the guy playing Cthulhu Warrior in most of those situations.
Especially when you have a Doomcaller in the deck. But that's the question, does he even play it? Because sometimes you just don't have the spot for it, right? But it seems like a very good opening hand. He has minions that can be played on board, which is very important in this matchup, because you always want to have at least one minion that's pressuring your opponent, because then your opponent has to answer those, doesn't have the time to hero power, and, hero power is something that you probably want to do it in this matchup anyway, because it goes to fatigue, most likely.
Yep, so straight away, Elise early is a big deal. You want that monkey in your deck, map to the gold monkey as soon as you possibly can. You also want to hit Justicar as soon as physically possible, but most importantly in this mirror, or in, you know, Control Warrior versus Control Warrior matchups, you need to draw playable cards in the top half of your deck. You can't just draw a handful of removal, because then you get in the position where you just have to start throwing away cards so you're not burning. So Elise Starseeker, Fiery War Axe, Justicar Trueheart, Gore Howl, all of these cards are things that you like to see, because even if they don't line up against good targets, they're at least cards that you can play and get out of your hand.
Exactly. Or at least the cycle cards, if possible. So Acolytes of Pain are a good example what you can do early in the game and still get something out of the turn. But in general, yes, you want to have those high-value cards first, because still a card like Acolyte of Pain can be changed into a legendary with the Elise.
Yeah, and
brings a lot of value.
A lot of the time, as soon as you draw a single card with Acolyte of Pain in this matchup, you're suddenly a long way behind if it goes all the way to Fatigue, especially if you don't have the knowledge as to what kind of matchup you're playing. Now that he knows he's up against Cthulhu Warrior, Deathboose will know that actually playing this game out all the way to Fatigue is not going to work in his favor. He now needs to come up with an alternate plan. He's seen that Crazed Worshipper come down, so he knows that going through 2 Cthulhu's and the extra cards that puts in your deck, or sorry, 3 Cthulhu's and the 2 extra cards that puts in your deck is not a route to winning the game that he's going to be able to achieve. So maybe he does have to go more aggressive based on that information, and we do start to see the Acolytes of Pain come down and him cycle through his deck, maybe just power his way to that monkey as soon as he possibly can.
Yeah, that's true. I'm watching Thomerio's way of thinking, because last turn he could have still played the Cthulhu's Chosen to finish off his opponent's minions, but he didn't opt to choose to play that. So I was thinking that he wants to use the Bran next turn with the Cthulhu's Chosen, but at the same time, you might not do that to save the Bran for the turn 10 with the Emperor to have a bigger board and actually a huge advantage in the matchup by playing the Emperor. But I'm not sure, maybe he changed his mind after that turn, because I feel like it was better to play the Cthulhu's Chosen the previous turn to be on curve on turn 7.
I mean, it's really interesting, because classically in the Control Warrior mirrors, you are trying to hit Emperor on one of those cards, Bran or Doomcaller, and then you are Bran Doomcallering to get those 2 extra Cthulhu's in your deck. That's generally your big game plan. So I guess he is just giving credit to the fact that people are now playing around that strategy too impressively. You know, you generally, a lot of the time, have to shield slam your own Cthulhu to make that happen, because your opponent will hold on to Sylvanas, steal your Cthulhu.
Yeah.
People are teching in Tinkmaster now on occasion, so he's decided that the Bran Doomcaller strategy is not what he wants to go for, but still a very low impact use of Bran overall compared to what it could be doing.
Yeah, that's correct. But we still don't know if there's a Doomcaller in the deck.
Sure.
So that might also affect the decision. But
Yep.
I would really love to see the Bran used with the Emperor if there's a Doomcaller in the deck, as an example, right? Still weak to the Brawl, but at some point in the game, the Brawl has to be played. So why not force it out? Or maybe your opponent doesn't have it, and then you push a lot of damage. So a lot of options. And let's see what Deathboose will be doing. The Gore Hole is something that kind of tips the favor into one of the players, because now the health is becoming a resource, an additional resource alongside the Gore Hole, which can just use as a trade tool with every single minion that your opponent will play. So a Shellbearer will still die to the second swing from the Gore Hole. The Emperors will still die from at least one of them will still die to a swing. So definitely an important card to have in this matchup.
Yep, so Soggoth now comes down. This is a nightmare for Warrior to interact with. Generally, any huge threat that comes down just gets dealt with Shield Slam and or Execute. So in this case, having the untargetable ability is massive. No Gore Howl to come at it the other way. And this is slightly interesting, because on the previous turn, he chose not to play any of his 6 health minions into this 6 power Gore Howl. But now, having seen the Soggoth come down, he's actually been pressured into, you know, making a suboptimal play here, really, and kind of just sacrificing minions to Deathboose, and that Justicar being picked up now. You mentioned health as a resource alongside the Gore Howl. No better tool to help him do it than that Justicar.
That is actually insane, because now he is way more comfortable by pulling out the attacks with his weapons, or just even letting through some attacks to get a better brawl value, an example. Just because he got the Justicar so early. I mean, it's turn 10. But when it comes to considering this matchup, that's early. That's like the early game.
Yeah, sure. he'd love to have had it on 6, but yeah, picking it up on turn 10 was just perfect there. Just fit in with his plan reasonably well. And it's going to be the brawl here from Thomerio. I definitely don't mind this. It might be the best brawl he possibly could have got, but that is the worst outcome. That is the Sogoth winning. Still no answer for it now in hand, and that thing is just going to start plugging away for 5 a turn, and it's going to quickly erode this health advantage that Thomerio has right now and really swing things in the favor of Deathboose.
So one of the answers that he can draw for the Sogoth, basically his own Garhole.
Yep.
And that's about it. A charge minion that has 5 attack.
Really... Cthulhu?
Yeah, I guess. I guess. But do you want to play Cthulhu already? It's just a 10-10 minion.
Right. 12-12, I think is.
Sorry, 12-12. Yes, you're correct.
So Gorhau swing for 5 here. Now has the revenge. That puts the Sogoth down to 4 health at least. So
doesn't change much, right? Because one Cthulhu's Chosen was played, and you can play 2 of those.
Ravaging Ghoul, Cthulhu's Chosen.
Okay, no, that's an answer.
He actually kills it this turn if he wants to, and every turn he doesn't kill it, that thing is just going to keep beating him in the face for 5. So
not that it's a big of a deal. I mean, right now.
Yeah, 5 damage is 5 damage. When this game, if this game does come all the way down to fatigue, then 1 extra attack of that to your face for 5 might actually end up making all the difference. And the health lead that you do have, and it's kind of primitive in Hearthstone to talk about health leads in terms of who's winning the game. But in the Control Warrior mirrors, where things do approach fatigue sometimes, having more health than your opponent is actually extremely relevant.
Yeah, that's true. And the only reason why Thomerio didn't play a single card on the board last turn is because Deathboose had 9 cards in his hand. So he knew that he will have to play something on the board, or at least use a spell to deal, to just make a space for his another card, not burn any spell that he has. So now the Golden Monkey, yes, Soto, that's true. I think the action can be played in the upcoming turn if you would like to.
He has a lot of really powerful cards left in his deck for sure, but still, that is such a fast monkey. I don't know how many cards he has left exactly, but it feels like he's got there way faster than on average. On average, you get it with like 5 or 6 cards left in your deck. So that is absolutely crazy to be able to pick it up that quickly, and he does have some decisions now to make, but I think as long as he has this 5-3 on board beating away, he definitely would have been tempted just to ride this to the bank, but now it's been answered by that combination of the Cthulhu's Chosen and the Ravaging Ghoul. Now he has some more questions to answer about whether he does want to suddenly go all in with this monkey.
Well, if he doesn't want to go with the monkey, then he needs to keep still the the Sylvanas in his hand, because you need to keep it till your opponent will play Cthulhu.
Right.
If you want to play the monkey, then you don't care about Sylvanas at all. So seeing this being played like it is being played means that Deathboose will have to play the long game and just wait till Cthulhu is being played.
Sure.
And he won't play the monkey before that point.
Yeah, the fact that Bran was already played in this matchup does give you a certain amount of freedom. I think if Bran hadn't been played already, there's absolutely no way you monkey, because you just kind of give that initiative over to your opponent to just play Cthulhu to clear out 1 or 2 of your first legendaries, then they Bran Doomcaller, and then they just Cthulhu a couple more times over the course of the game. Like, you probably aren't going to beat that if they get deep enough in their deck to be able to do it. The fact that option isn't even there anymore means that maybe there's a window for you to go for it, but that Sylvanas in hand is still a very, very big deal. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure we're going to see decision time coming up, because after this Doomsayer goes off, there's not ever going to be a better opportunity to monkey if he's ever going to do it.
Yeah, and also you don't have anything to play from your hand. You need to keep that Sylvanas, right? And other cards that you have in your hand are basically pointless. You can shoot block. That's maybe it, but then you need to draw a card that you can play. It might be a Fiery War Axe, so attack with the Gorhole, replace it with a Fiery War Axe, and that's basically it. Other cards that can be played. A Ghoul.
Doomsayer number 2.
Oh, you're right, he plays 2 of those.
We saw 2 in the original series, so there's a few draws, and it looks like Deathboose
he didn't play a single card.
Actually did not play a card here, so he will burn the next card that he draws, and if he didn't have a card to play this turn, then actually Thomerio can decide to say, well, I'm just not going to play cards here either. You're going to keep burning cards off the top of your deck. So Deathboose realizes that's the case. So what he's saying is, I actually have everything I need in my hand right now. The rest of my deck is irrelevant. I have Sylvanas Shield Slam to deal with your Cthulhu. I have the Golden Monkey already, so that cannot get burned. So I'm actually perfectly fine burning every card in the rest of my deck just to push this towards fatigue.
Yep. I like the decision a lot, but now Thomerio has to make a decision of his own because he would be burning cards. So he puts a card on the table, and that's about it. Wow. I mean, that's the first time I'm seeing this.
I mean, it looks silly, for sure. It looks very, very strange, but there is no reason. You know, nothing says that you have to want the card that you draw every turn. If you do, you've drawn all the win condition cards in a matchup in the top half of your deck, then sure, who needs the bottom half? Let's just wait until it's all gone.
Agromosh is being burned.
Suddenly the second minion comes down, activates the Brawl. The Justicar does live in the end, though.
Wow, that's awkward as hell.
It sure is. This is a really, really silly control warrior mirror.
So, if you play the Brawl last turn, but your opponent will play additional minion, will you Brawl again?
Probably. He held on to Sylvanas and Coin for a really long time to potentially be able to Sylvanas Coin Brawl at some point in the game, which is immensely powerful. More so against the N'Zoth builds than Cthulhu, but still a useful tool to have. But he's got himself into this position by, you know, not spending cards from his hand where he had to throw away the coin at some point, and that went out the window. So having seen Twin Emps used already, and, you know, that's probably the only big thing that you're going to need a Brawl for against this deck. So just using the Brawls when you can to get them out of your hand is probably reasonable.
Yeah. True. What is this match? What just happened? He's playing around Brawl. Wow.
I guess so, yeah.
That's a good, that's a decent card, actually.
Yeah. It's playable, which is important, although that is one of the very worst outcomes. Just Faceless Shambler as a 1-1 and Keeper of the Grove as a 2-2, I believe, are the only worse outcomes than that.
But at least you give your weapons some options if they will trade with the Ghoul, but that's not the case, because the Fury Warlocks will take care of the Defend of August. Still a Ghoul is bashing his face. Cthulhu's chosen, I think so, right?
Seems fine. It's worth noting as well, there's actually a few extra minions, Cthulhu minions in this deck than a conventional build.
Well, there's the Worshipper, right?
The Crazed Worshipper, yeah. And Beckoner of Evil isn't always played in every single build, the 2-mana 2/3, so he's actually been able to get his Cthulhu here all the way up to a 2020, I believe this is going to proc to, yeah. He's had Bran activate on one of his Disciples of Cthulhu, and just through the sheer amount of minions that he has, he's managed to get it there as a 2020, so even if there is one Doomcaller or one activation of Doomcaller here, those two Cthulhu's are going to be huge in terms of what they do when they come onto the board.
A good outcome of the draw also enables the Fury Warlocks to take control of the game in this matchup by having an empty board and a weapon. So that's sounds silly, but it actually gives some advantage to Deathboose, and he needed that for a long time. So he gets back on the board, but now there's a decision for Thomerio. Are you going for the Cthulhu? If not, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for the fatigue to come in, and then you play the Cthulhu just to finish up the game? And is this his objective, to finish up the game?
I think ideal world, he'd like to create a scenario where when he plays Cthulhu, since he's not shield slamming it himself, he would, I mean, this is all kind of dependent on there being a Doomcaller in the deck somewhere. So, I mean, like, if that isn't the case, this is all nonsense, and you can kind of Cthulhu whenever you feel like it, but dream scenario, he'd like to clear the armor when he plays Cthulhu, so that Sylvanas Shield Slam is not as easy for his opponent to achieve. Right now, of course, that 20 damage would only put his opponent on 5 armor, meaning Sylvanas Shield Slam is still live, but you know, as I said, this is all kind of dependent on the fact that we know what Thomerio's build is, and having seen the Crazed Worshipper, for example, that's not necessarily the case. There could be any manner of silliness going on in the build.
True. And another burned card in this matchup. So far, Thomerio burned a 1 card, but Deathboose burned like 4, not mistaken.
But you know, now I'm wondering, because if there is a Doomcaller in your deck, you are risking burning that Doomcaller now with every card that goes past.
So maybe he doesn't.
Maybe it just
right?
isn't there, but it would be really unusual to not play the Doomcaller or an Elise in your deck, right? Normally, one of those two is always there. Either way, he hasn't drawn it, and he's risking burning it at any given point here.
What a weird match.
It is just really, really, really unusual.
That's kind of funny to watch. Let's see what will burn. That was the Fury War Axe, no Doomcaller.
It's just not there. This is a super low curve version of the deck. No additional win condition outside that one Cthulhu. The extra minion presence, clearly he's targeted his control warrior here at dealing with the aggro decks, the shamans, the zoos, all that kind of stuff, making sure he has that extra taunt in the mid game and without that big clunky draw of the Doomcaller. So he now does only have one Cthulhu to get through, and now Deathboose has decided that it does have to be monkey time. He will lose this game on pure fatigue at this point.
And it's very interesting to see his choice now. There's a Bran.
There is a Bran.
Does it change anything? Well, there's a Chromacus.
There's also a Hogger Doom of Elwyn, which is pretty solid against Cthulhu.
Yes, it is. It's actually a counter. If the Archon missiles from Cthulhu will kill the 2/2s and then damage the Hogger. But if the Cthulhu is big enough, it will not make a difference. Let's see what will happen. Thomerio needs to deal with those minions. And his hand is not really looking very appealing, right? But he knows, most likely, that there's no Sylvanas anymore. Because it can be spawned from the effect of the Golden Monkey. But what are the chances, right? There's only 9 legendaries left in your opponent's hand. So there's a huge chance there's actually no Sylvanas left. And even if there's a Sylvanas left, if the Cthulhu will change the owner of, and you will face a 22/22 minion, then you still have a Shield Slam that will kill it.
Yeah, still just casually kill a 22/22 for 1 mana. Seems balanced.
True. What do you think about Sylvanas this turn? Take some damage and then brawl?
Honestly, I like this. I just like the Cthulhu coming down. He has huge percentage to be able to clear the board with the War Axe as well. And now, suddenly, your opponent who's transformed all their removal has to try and develop into a 2020, which is not a situation they want to be in at all. The only part, possibly, I don't like about this is that you isolate the Brawl in your hand, because that 2020 has to kind of win you the game from this point. If that 2020 dies, you're in trouble, which means Brawl is a hard card for you to cast. So maybe it was a little better to just cast Brawl first, follow up with Cthulhu on the turn afterwards.
But how does your opponent kill now the 2020 when you still have...
Very good question.
You still have the bash. Slam. You still have 2 shield slams. So you can basically mutilate everything that will be played on the board and connect to the face with a Cthulhu at least twice.
Yeah.
And that's like winning the game.
I mean, there are options. He can get Ren Blackhand plus Dragon. Deathwing isn't an issue. You beat Deathwing, no problem. It also Tinkmaster Overspark can deal with it. So there are legendary options that your opponent can hit, which can deal with this 2020 and then leave you in a little bit of trouble. But still, at some point, he's going to have to make the play where this hits the board and he tries to win the game with it. So it may as well have been as soon as possible. I just do wonder about maybe that Brawl first, since it's now a really hard card for him to use.
So now 5 damage will go to the Cthulhu. 11 is still kind of waiting for him. If the animals will trade next turn. But Thomerio has the option of just killing it with the Shield Slam. Cthulhu will be still staying on a healthy, let's say, like that, 12 HP. So I don't see an easy way.
Well, it's going to take 8 from the Death Rattle, right? How much does Anomalus's Death Rattle do?
Is it 8?
Is it 8, 6, something? It's a big number. It's a really big number. Actually going to go for Sylvanas Shield Slam here and just steal that thing away. Push the 20, and now he's just setting up lethal on the board. Deathboose's plan here was just Leroy plus the buffs that he has in hand to be able to finish off the remainder of that Cthulhu, but doesn't look like it's going to be good enough anymore.
By the way, 51 damage from the Shield Slam kind of looked ridiculous.
You just trade into the Anomalous so we can find out what's going on. No, all right, fine.
So how much damage Anomalous is doing? I think it. But well, we'll never know. I mean, we can check it on a mobile phone. Who cares?
But yeah, a grueling game, a Control Warrior mirror that played out in a manner very, very unfamiliar to what I'm used to seeing. Neither player really going for the traditional win condition, and it kind of just hit a complete stalemate in the mid-game, where both players were just willing to burn the remainder of their deck. And in that situation, it's most apparent in a Control Warrior mirror, where you'll usually get to a point where both of you are doing nothing.
Yeah,
if both of you are doing nothing, one of you is doing it wrong. Yes. One of you has to be making an action. Sometimes that's really difficult to be able to identify. Sometimes it's a little bit easier. I think in that spot, maybe Deathboose had to look at his situation and say that he needed to go for that Power Monkey a little bit earlier. But either way, Thomerio will be very happy that he got his anti-aggro build of Control Warrior through a Control Warrior mirror. That is a massive plus for him.
Yeah, I think that Deathboose just decision to go for the burning, to burn his most of his cards was just based on the fact that he doesn't know if the Death Color is in his opponent's deck. If that will be the case, then I think it was a good decision to just wait till your opponent will play the Cartoon, because then you know you're kind of denying your opponent's clear way of winning the matchup. Like 100% of the times he will just lose if there's a Doom Color, right?
Yes.
So he can't really do that. And the only chance of winning the game in this edition would have been waiting, but that happens when you don't have the full information about your opponent's decks. So I think it was correct from Deathboose's perspective to make the decision of not playing anything for several turns. But at the same time, sometimes I think there's some room for madness and just play the Golden Monkey early on to just kind of pressure your opponent with some high power legendaries, and there would be still like 16 or maybe even more cards left in the deck at that point. So maybe there was a small chance of doing that. Maybe it was better, even when there's the Doom Color, right? Because your opponent still can outmaneuver you in this spot, because it will come to the same thing at some point of the game where Deathboose will be waiting every single turn for the Cartoon, and it will not come. Even when there's a Doom Color in Thomerio hand, because then he will try to just get into the point where the Cartoon will finish up the game because of the fatigue damage. So Deathboose will be pushed to play the Golden Monkey at some point anyway.
And we saw those cards being burned, and yeah, sure, most of them weren't important. We saw the Grom go down, but otherwise it was, a Bash and a Revenge or whatever. But he had the Golden Monkey in his hand, so those cards that were being burned, sure, they came out of the deck as a Bash and a Revenge and whatever else, but you can just as easily look at those cards getting burned and say, oh, there goes a Ragnaros, there goes a Tyrion. Like, those are legendaries that he could have drawn from his deck if he'd have played the Monkey earlier, and he ended up basically just backing himself into a checkmate situation where Golden Monkey lost the game because he just didn't have enough legendaries left to beat Cthulhu. Fatigue lost the game because he was just behind on that as well, and he basically had just no outs at the end of the game apart from just trying to roll into the most ridiculous 9-minion Golden Monkey that the world has ever seen, and it just wasn't going to be good enough. But that game was that game, and now we will move on to games anew, and it is going to be Zoo going up against the Druid from Thomerio.
And we have already seen that today.
We have.
And we know how it usually should end up. And that's Zoo winning against the Druid. But at the same time, that method that we have seen was very close. And it was only lost because the Druid player actually made a mistake.
Yes.
So maybe we'll see that again.
Yeah, very, very true. We've seen the Druid generally drawing really well today in the Nordic Championship. We've seen them in the matchups where they are under pressure early, which is generally how they lose against these very, very early, aggressive, curvy tempo decks. We've seen them hitting innovates with remarkable consistency, living roots as well. None of that this time from Thomerio. He does have the 2 Wraths in his hand, but Wrath, honestly, a little bit slow against Zoo these days. It takes care of the 3-2 here, but the 1-1 is still in play. You're passing initiative back to your opponent. It draws a card here anyway. Malcazar's in picked up. If he can now get, say, a Soulfire to come together with that Silverware Golem, he's going to be in an amazing spot. But no such huge ramp start for Thomerio this time round, although he does have double Feral Rage for a lot of stability later on in the game if he can get a grip on this board.
It all depends.
Wow.
Oh my god. Okay, that's the dream, right? Because now you play 2 minions.
Yes.
You're able to trade the Maya Keeper. You build up a huge console, man. And the next turn means you will have...
Ellie Giggle? No? Okay, no tap. All right.
So he didn't go for the second golden dream. But I like this, to be honest. You build up the board for 10 HP next turn, and you will just discard 1 card. And you don't have, like, 100% you will have the golem next turn, right? You don't tap this turn. So I like this.
Yeah, no, this is totally fine. I was just questioning whether there was going to be that shame tap at the end. But yeah, this way he slams Doomguard, he discards 2 turns. Basically what this means by foregoing the tap here is that you are 100% sure you are going to Doomguard next turn, your opponent is 100% sure that you are going to Doomguard next turn, and you just both progress with the game with that knowledge in mind. So
and to be honest, I think it's even 100% chance that your opponent has something that is beneficial to the discard.
Sure.
Because why would you not tap, right?
Yeah.
Even if you plan to do Doomguard on next turn in this situation. So it doesn't look good for Thomerio right now.
And I think he's forced to respect the Councilman no matter what here, but Innovate and Wrath on the Imp here, this is purely probably in reaction based to that read that you can have. It's very, very easy to divine the exact hand of your opponent here, the Doomguard and the Silverware Golem. Soulfire, not the card he wanted, but he'll have to make do with his Doomguard jamming 1 Silverware into play. And Thomerio here is now a long way behind. That Drake swipe is just a long way off in the future right now.
But that Soulfire draw is actually a very memorable moment, because the same situation was when RDU was playing at the European Championship, sorry, at the last call for BlizzCon, because he had the option to either play safe and maybe play the Golem, just discard the Soulfire, or go for the Soulfire 50-50 to still keep the Doomguard. So that was an option, and well, that was the same option for Deathboose, but he went for the safe play, and I don't blame him. He's ahead, miles ahead in this game, so there's no way you can lose if you just go for the safe play.
Yeah, and you talk about pro players analyzing whether plays are correct. I actually criticized RDU for that play that he made during the broadcast, and then Noblord, who is another pro player, said that he was going to review the play on stream and we were going to work out whether it was wrong or not. It took him somewhere close to an hour. It was between 45 minutes and an hour to evaluate every situation, what reads you could have in the hand, what cards were used, what was left in the deck. So that is the kind of detail that these players go into. 1 single turn, sat and analyzed for an hour straight to try and figure out if just that 1 option was correct or not. Not necessarily what the best option was, but just is that 1 option right or not? So, you know, there is a very, very hidden layer of depth to this game that most people do not ever come into contact with, but the most serious of players, that's where they live. And we've been talking about unconnected things because this game has been a formality for a very, very long time. Zoo squares up the series now for Deathboose. The Swedish crowd are rooting for their home favorite, and he ties it back up 1-1, and this is the kind of position where we start to see the nerves come back in from Thomerio previously.
For sure, he needs to be, you know, he needs to be stoic, he needs to be very fresh, and just avoid doing those small mistakes that kind of might have ended up taking the semifinal from him, and it was very close, so he needs to be had a composure station here to still take the grand finals. And I feel like he's nervous, he feels normal for me. He's blinking a lot, but that's about it.
He looks okay. He was very visibly nervous, as most people are the first time they've just got a camera shoved in their face and someone's asking them questions. He was very, very visibly nervous. We could see, I don't know how well it came across on camera, but we could both see standing next to him, he was clearly nervous. And he doesn't look like that there, being sat in that seat. Feels a lot more natural, obviously playing Hearthstone than being in front of a camera. And I think it's, at least, unless this is a Druid mirror, the 1 player got a nutty Druid hand with a Living Roots, a Wild Growth, I think an Innovate in there as well. So we are just waiting to find out which of the players that was. It is a Druid mirror, and it's Deathboose. No, Thomerio is the top player, right? So it's Thomerio that's, and it's actually the scores are incorrect as well. It's 1-1 we are currently at in the series, not 2-0 to Thomerio.
The opening is a Living Roots, and I like that a lot. Even against a Druid player, you want to put the Living Roots as soon as possible because your opponent might actually have the Wild Growth, so you can get some additional damage from the Living Roots before in that time. So I like that. Raven Idol from Deathboose here, only probably motivated because of the fact that he has 2. Right?
Yeah. And also doesn't have Wild Growth in your hand. I think any time you do not have Wild Growth in your hand, it is correct to cast Raven Idol on turn 1. Generally, like, people even ask this question about whether you're supposed to keep Raven Idol, because keeping Raven Idol and casting Raven Idol on turn 1 to look for Innovate or Wild Growth is about the same percentage as mulliganing it away to look for Innovate or Wild Growth from your deck. So there's actually an argument just to holding onto it for that very, very purpose. But the hand is starting to run a little bit dry after that quick start from Thomerio, but the Nourish will help change that very quickly, and you definitely do have time in this matchup to make some slow plays like Nourish on turn 5, just to make sure you do have a resource advantage.
Ooh, Nourish and... Wait, does that change anything? Not really. But if you go for the Nourish this turn, you're kind of running low on cards. Will this change anything in this matchup? He goes to the draw, so yes, it does change.
Yeah, Nourish for draw there definitely makes sense. Just want to make sure he has the resource advantage. He already has the Innovate in his hand, so even if his goal is to move towards Malagos, he does that in 2 turns anyway. It's not really slowing him down from getting Malagos on the board that much. So I definitely like the draw in this situation, and now he's got a hand that's just stacked full of value, stacked full of threats, and he's got gas to just keep himself going for the next several turns now.
There will be some very difficult decisions to be made because of the fact that you can actually play Malagos on board, and that is dictated by the fact how much do you risk if your opponent has a mulch.
Yes.
If you're sure that your opponent doesn't have a mulch because you tried to bait it out before, then it has some merit. Innovating Wild Growth. It stops me kind of in the tracks because it allows you to play the Engine of War, but at the same time, it doesn't allow you to play Malagos and some spells on top of it, apart from Living Roots and a Moonfire. I'm not sure what they think about that, but...
So, I mean, the Innovate, he could have just played Ancient of War next turn with the Innovate, right? And still have the Wild Growth. But this means he has a curve, I guess, which is Ancient of War into Drake plus Feral Rage, into Malagos plus Moonfire, right? This actually gives him the ability to curve out through that consistently. I'm not entirely sure that I like the use of the Innovate Wild Growth in that spot, but it does at least, you know, put him in decent shape for the Arcane Giant. But now he's going to have to deal with this Fandral because you cannot let Fandral live.
And he goes for the Azure Drake.
What?
So he leaves the Fandral alive?
No way. This is amazing.
This is nuts. This is something that you really can't do. You had the Feral Rage. You could have killed it.
I think he's miscounted his mana once before, just, you know, self-confessed, said that he didn't realize he didn't have 10 mana. That's why he hero powered first before he made that play with the 2/4 drops, or didn't make that play with the 2/4 drops. Maybe he thought he could Drake and still Feral Rage Moonfire that turn, but even then, you're using up a Moonfire when you have a Malagos in your hand. I cannot believe this Fandral is still alive. I am in shock.
And that will cost him dearly. And still, the Fandral will eat the same removal that it could have been killed with this turn. But it did cost him a Nourish, an additional effect, and then a Feral Rage with additional effect. And that is actually crucial in this matchup.
Yeah, just incredible decision to leave this alive, and he is starting to look just a little bit frustrated. It's like it may be getting to him a little bit. The big occasion on this stage at the Nordic Championship, the weight of a country on his back, carrying the hopes of Norway with him. It looks like the pressure might just be starting to mount on his shoulders just that little bit, but double swipe to take care of the Arcane Giant, followed up by a Ragnaros. This will make him feel just that little bit better.
Yeah, because clearly there was no mulch, so if there will be no mulch drawn, most likely you'll have to use your entire hand to deal with that rag. But But, iconic situation, Rag versus Rag, who hits what?
Lothar, I feel like I've been watching this for 3 years. Just Ragnaros is coming down and shooting fireballs at each other. There is, nothing more iconic was the word that you used. Synchronetic with Hearthstone, I guess, as Ragnaros the Fire Lord. He's kind of like the identifying card to the game. He's just everything that the game stands for. And it looks like Ragnaros might come down here and have a huge impact in deciding who is going to emerge the victor in this game at least.
Let's see who will be tilting. And it's Thomerio. Getting his own Ragnaros killed just by your opponent's Ragnaros feels bad. But there's an option to kill it. There's the gracious Wrath drone this turn, so you can kill it. But and you know that your opponent doesn't have a way of dealing with your Malagos, right? But at the same time, you use a lot of spells already.
He actually can just go through it with raw damage.
Never mind.
Swipe, Feral Rage, Living Roots, and why not an Arcane Giant as the cherry on top? That Giant draw was huge that turn because this turned a miserable turn into an insane one. Kill a 4/12, put your own 8/8 into play for the cost of 10 mana.
And look at that. He's at 17 HP, but when you think about it, 8 was just from the Feral Rage that was played when the Founder was alive. He would have been 9 and already kind of like on brink of losing this game. If that Founder could have been killed, oh my god, a mold from the top.
Nice of you to show up, buddy. Like, I have to go through an Arcane Giant, a Ragnaros, a Malagos, all without you, and then you just come out right in the nick of time. Ancient of War on the board, gets mulched. Senjin isn't a bad pickup from the mulch, but it's nowhere near the level of power minion that he needs. This one looks like it might be slipping away.
It certainly doesn't look great for Thomerio, and that turn when he didn't kill the Fandral was the turn that did switch the tables. It's not the Rag versus Rag.
No.
That was important, but yes, but it wasn't about that. The Fandral turn was the most important aspect of the game.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think I got carried away with the drama of the Rag just a little bit. That was that huge decision to leave the Fandral alive. The Nourish didn't have a huge impact in terms of mana, just drew the cards. But as you said, that Feral Rage has changed the complexion of this game significantly because Deathboose would again be at 8 now. And Thomerio is sat with a Feral Rage in hand, so he's not far off just being able to threaten lethal himself. So, as you mentioned, that decision that Thomerio made is going to have a huge impact, and it's all snowballed from there. The Arcane Giants now, and there it is, the Feral Rage swipe.
That would have been the game.
-8 from the Feral Rage that he got to cast with Fandral would have ended the game.
Not only the counter from the Nourish, but also the fact that he ramped actually.
Right. It was later in the game though, so I think he only gained 1 or maybe 2 mana from that. But in the end, lesson to those of you at home, in case you never got this message, if you leave Fandral alive, bad things happen.
Yep, you're gonna have a bad
You're gonna have a bad time.
So it's 2-1 for Deathboose, and he just needs one more win to take the title of Nordic Championships here at Dreamhack Winter 2016. Very close for Sweden to take it home.
Yep.
Not far away.
We actually know what that deck is because we've seen it already. It's the Control Warrior from Deathboose that has to run into now the Druid and Zoo are remaining from Thomerio, and this Druid from Thomerio does have a decent amount of threats in there. There's the Rag, there's the Arcane Giants, there's the Ancient of War, there's Emperor. These are all things that can quite often demand one of the premium removal spells. And when I say premium removal spell, I mean Shield Slam or Execute. There are 4 of those.
That's not actually that many.
Right, there are 4 of those. So already I've named 5 threats that you might want to use those on. So key to this matchup as the Druid player is trying to get one of those huge minions to stick and get him repetitive damage, because just letting the Warrior hang around at 30 plus and trying to kill them just with Malagos Burst very rarely works. You need to get minions to stick and keep pressure up that way.
Also, you kind of miss one removal, which is a premium one, I think, and that's Gorehall.
Sure, yeah.
Because it not only kills one minion, but it also helps you to clear the next one, most likely. With the help with bashes, he doesn't play slams, if I remember correctly, but he has bash. We even see it right now in the hand. So there's still some options. And the Gorhal, I think, is even more important to get it early in the game, just to deal with as many minions as possible with it when you can.
Yeah, I think Slam will be the cut that he's made to fit these Doomsayers into his deck, more than likely, right? So that makes a ton of sense. But decent opening here, has the Acolyte, has the Justicar already, so he can start to immediately outrange the burst damage potential from the opponent and make the line very clear that there is going to have to be some minion presence, some board control from the Druid to be able to force through damage. But as soon as you start making clear to the opponent that they do need to develop their board, then suddenly your other cards like Brawl can come into play. And when your premium removal spells, as we've been calling them, have to be rationed out, if you're able to catch one of those big minions in a Brawl, that is a huge bonus for you, because that essentially saves you one of those shield slams or executes for the length of the game.
That's true. Unfortunately, it's not something that you can be certain of, right? First of all, your opponent needs to overextend, and second of all, you need to roll the dice.
Yes.
Wait, what just happened?
Innovate.
Coin into an Innovate Nourish. A coin was lost, and Thomerio seems to be having problem with the nerves again.
Yeah, it's not looking good for him. I don't know whether he thought he didn't have enough mana or whether he thought he was going to fill his hand up. Like, whatever caused him to throw the coin away there, either way, it was incorrect. And he's just down a coin for no reason, really, and stuck now on 4 mana with a handful of cards that he can't play.
And it would have made a huge difference for the next turn when you can just drop Emperor.
Yep.
With a stacked hand like this, it would matter a lot. But now you delay that by 1 turn, and you still need to deal with the minions on board. So, doesn't look great.
Doesn't, but...
What are the options? Okay, let's forget about that. Now let's focus what he needs to do to get back on track. There's a Wrath for the 3/3, if he wants to deal even with the minions. But at the same time, I feel like those Wraths are very important to deal with bigger minions. Like, an example, Justicar, right? It's a huge threat that you need to deal with. But you have 2.
Yeah, they're also important to cycle in this matchup quite often, honestly. It really is about drawing your deck as fast as you can and just making sure you get to your threats on average quicker than the warrior gets to his removal. That gives you the maximum chance of A, being able to stick a minion to the board because they haven't drawn all their executes and shield slams yet, and then B, having that Malagos combo in your hand quick enough by drawing. So generally you do want to cycle, which means using Wrath for 3 damage does feel like kind of a loss in this matchup, but still, he knows he does have to address this board state sooner rather than later, and this play does tidy things up quite nicely. You're not expecting the opponent to develop board too often on turn 5, so this might give you the time that you need.
At the same time, I'm thinking that leaving the Acolyte of Pain around wouldn't be a big problem.
Sure.
An issue, because it's only 1 attack, and Living Roots can actually have way more value than just killing the Acolyte of Pain. And you know the opponent is running like, the double Brawl, the double Doomsayer version, so what do you want to do? You can't play the Doomsayer when you still have the Acolyte of Pain on board. If you do that, then you sacrifice the Acolyte of Pain, so you still have the Living Roots in hand. So I kind of disagree with the Living Roots, but I can see why he wants to have the board clean. Because he wants to avoid playing Emperor into an Acolyte of Pain that can attack into it and activate the Execute as well.
Very true. You saw it from Deathboose's perspective there. If you've ever heard the phrase Tempo Doomsayer thrown around and wondered what on earth that means, what you just saw is the very definition of a Tempo Doomsayer. He wasn't trying to kill a board with it. He wasn't even trying to block his opponent from playing anything specific. It's not like he played it into his opponent's Emperor turn and said, you're not Emperoring this turn. It was literally just, you skip your go, so I have tempo next turn because I want to play my Justicar. And this is a slow, clunky minion for you to develop on the turn you play it. So I'm going to use my Doomsayer preemptively just to get that free turn of tempo to develop my board.
Okay, but what just happened here is also very interesting. There was a Moonfire for phase, 1 damage, just to play the Archon Giant. And to be honest, I would probably prefer just to drop the Emperor instead of sacrificing the Moonfire and playing the Giant into a first removal.
Yeah, so here's the thing. This is not a great hand to Emperor because it doesn't have Malagos pieces in it, right? But he's already used 1 Living Roots, and his alternative to dropping Emperor was to use a Moonfire. So he's obviously not holding back Emperor because he's on the Malagos plan.
Yeah,
that doesn't make any sense. It's not a justification. So when you consider all those factors, sure, I totally agree with you. I think Emperor was vastly superior there to Arcane Giant, but honestly, I think, did he have the Drake in his hand at that point? He must have done, right?
Yeah, he could have just played the Drake
instead.
instead.
Just played Drake. Yeah, I mean, that
was
would have been
curve.
my play.
Yeah, it was off curve, but it was still better than just playing the Arcane Giant and the Moonfire to the face. So both of those plays, Emperor and Drake, could have been considerate.
Surely the Arcane Giant is the same cost now as it would have been last turn, right? So he played the Arcane Giant for 4 mana. So how would he have Emperored or Drake? He wouldn't have had the mana available, right? What else did he do with his turn?
Wrath.
Okay.
I think.
So yeah, so would have been a 6 mana turn, he would have been down to 4. So yeah, Drake Wrath wouldn't have worked. He could have just played Emperor and passed.
Yeah, but yes, that's what I was
played
thinking.
Drake and pass.
Yes, Drake or Emperor and pass.
Yeah, both of those plays.
You just don't kill the Justicar, you just
yeah.
ignore it for one turn.
Yeah, both of those plays I like better in that case then.
So now, what are the options? You can play the Slam into Bash, which is not bad because you cycle and you build up the armor so you can have a Shield Slam available if you draw it. But this this Slitherer on curve is actually incredible against Deep Druid in general.
Sogchamp. I forgot about Sogchamp. I forgot it was in this deck, but yeah, that could really help him to wall out some of this mid-range pressure from Thomerio. He's just dropping the Geddon here to have another threat. That's a threat that we failed to mention when we were accounting for all the minions that need dealing with. So that being in the deck is just another thing that he can use to get some pressure on the warrior. But Soggoth the Slitherer is just a pretty excellent counter to Baron Geddon, because it's not like you can just trade into it and let Baron Geddon do the last 2 damage.
Yeah, he kind of doesn't live that long to do that. So
yeah.
The options are you can swipe face and finish it up with the hero power, after attacking, of course, with the Baron Geddon, but that's kind of sad to see. What are the other options? You can Venerable Rage. Oh, yeah, I forgot about the Mark of Nature. Okay.
He got the Mark of Nature off Ravenheart, so in fact he can do exactly that play. Just attack into it, sit and let the Baron Geddon do the work for him with the use of that Mark of Nature that I think he picked up all the way back on turn 1 from the Raven Idol. Looked like a kind of a weird pick at the time, but in the end getting the job done. And this execute is a little bit scary for Deathboose. He knows he has to deal with it, but
Wouldn't you prefer the Iron Portal first? It can get you a minion that can have a charge and then use the Slam into the minion.
Sure. Yeah, no, you're right. You can get Stormwind Knight, for example. Exactly. There's also just cards that have positive triggers when you cast spells. It's not relevant right now, but you can get Priest of the Feast, for example, whereas there's no real downside, I don't think, from Ironforge Portal if you're going to cast a spell afterwards. It's not like the Naga Sea Witch Punish from Firelands Portal that you can get sometimes. So.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, didn't really matter. The minion wasn't impactful.
Right.
But now, for Thomerio, he has 8 mana left. He can squeeze 2 big minions, 2 big threats on the board, but then you can see a brawl from an opponent, and that is something that you don't want to see at all in this matchup. You want to have 1 big threat that is just dealing damage and pressures the warrior to find an answer to it, which is not named brawl. And that's about it. But in this case, that's what he's doing, but he's sacrificing a lot of cards in the process, and he's doing that for several turns in a row now. So he will be running out of options at some point.
But now finally we do see this situation that I've been talking about since the beginning of this matchup, which is there is a threat in play with no answer, no execute or shield slam in hand, but the Sylvanas pickup is huge. That will do as an auxiliary answer. Raven Idol now going to come down, try and look for some solution to this problem.
Maybe he's playing for a minion with silence.
Recycle isn't in the format anymore, so he can't pick up Recycle to get rid of the Sylvanas off the board. So sure, just, yeah, minion into Spellbreaker. Seems like a good plan.
Wait, but what does he get?
Pharaoh Rage, right?
No, that was a pick.
Oh, he's already had it, so he's disconnected. Okay, well...
Oh, holy moly!
956 packs!
Who has so many packs? Like, what?
Wow.
What happened here? Wait, that's Thomerio's account?
I guess so, yeah.
No, because that's a spectator mode only. So the spectator has so many packs.
You're right, yeah.
Who's the spectator? That's like a mystery man that owns like 2 collections,
just
basically.
hoarding all of the packs. Still, Thomerio does have a ton of golden cards in his collection. He's playing primarily golden decks, but yeah, we still are failing to see what he picked up from that Raven Idol, but still was able to deal with the Sylvanas problem. And with the news that there was no Shield Slam or Execute to deal with the Arcane Giant, developing the 5/10 still feels pretty good.
Yeah, that's true. And he got a Dark Arakawa, so he was actually going for a minion.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of consistent with the matchup. Some people will say you're just always supposed to take minion in this matchup anyway, which I disagree with. I think you should definitely take minion in this matchup a lot more often than any other matchup.
It depends if you have still the Malagos plan or not, right?
And I think this is the point people miss, is that anytime you draw a Raven Idol in the Control Warrior matchup, there is a lot more assessment that goes into the decision than any other time. And it's dependent on factors like whether you have a bunch of spells in your hand, but whether you need to hit Nourish exactly just to refill your hand, whether you still have the Malagos out as a plan later on. And in this situation, Thomerio definitely does not have the Malagos out left available to him.
Yeah,
so he needed a big, chunky minion to help push through some of this pressure.
And this is another thing that we mentioned before the game even started. The Brawl is getting some action. It kills a 5/10, so that's the additional removal that is crucial at this point. And also, the Gorhol is just waiting for another minion to take a bite of the axe, and go 6 feet under.
Yeah, so I set this up at the start of the game. I said this matchup is all about lining up the threats against the Shield Slams and the Executes. 1 Shield Slam and 1 Execute has been used, but an Arcane Giant has been killed by Sylvanas.
Yes.
A Ancient of War has been killed by Brawl. That means now that there is a Shield Slam and an Execute left in the deck with only really Ragnaros, this Dark Arakoa, and a Malagos to come from the Druid deck, which means now Deathboose can actually line up his removal pretty favorably against what his opponent's trying to do.
Yep, I agree. And Ease was also played, right? So at some point he will get into the monkey role, and that is kind of dead, because he can't play before he plays every single removal.
Yes.
But in this situation, Thomerio is actually thinking about the Ragnaros, and I disagree. I would just play the Mindkeeper for additional threats, just to kind of bait out the second Brawl, if there is a second Brawl.
Yeah, from his perspective, sure, he's just seen 1 Brawl used, but he's also seen a lot of dead cards in his opponent's hand. Those 2 Revenges on the left-hand side, for example, have been there for a massive amount of time. So I think second Brawl is definitely something you can put your opponent on in this situation. And now, again, Brawl has an ability to kill a minion here that it doesn't need to kill. And look at this. This is the exact situation. He knows he does not care about his 2 minions. He only cares about killing his opponents. And it's the Rag that wins!
Oh my god, the Rag wins!
Colossal!
That is actually impressive, because now the next turn will be additional 8 damage to the face if Deathboose will go for the Gorhol Revenge. And he will just attack into the Ragnaros. There's no other way, currently of course, to kill it. And even if he gets a shield block, he will have 8 armor less, maybe even more, because there's still a chance that the opponent will attack into you or just play a spell to just kind of deny you the shield slam. So this might be really tough.
Yeah, and this Dark Arakoa picked up from the Raven Idol into minion, this could have a huge impact now because it blocks that plan of the Gorehowl coming down and finishing it off with the Revenge. So maybe Execute can be drawn here or Shield Slam, but if it's the Execute, then suddenly Malagos can just wreak havoc in the late game if there's no Execute to deal with that.
2 Brawls are gone as well, and 1 Shield Slam, right?
Yeah, 2 Brawls, 1 Shield Slam, 1 Execute have been used, I believe.
Feral Rage as well.
He's going to clear out the armor here. He's going to deal the 8, let Ragnaros take off the remainder of the armor, which means even a Shield Slam top deck now is not live to kill that Rag.
And I like that decision a lot. Unfortunately, he doesn't have triple wields to do something with all those weapons.
Oh, this is...
Doesn't look pretty.
This is going to get ugly very quickly. Goes back up to 28 here, so down to 24, down to 16 with the Rag. So it's unlikely his Revenges will be active here, but now with the
14,
Malagos...
18 damage? Huh. I mean, you can just slam it on the board. You didn't see an Execute, right? You can just slam that Malygos on the board wreak havoc with that one Moonfire for 6. But at the same time, it will deal additional 4 damage next turn. So it's like an additional Hazard Rake on board. And you know that it doesn't really matter if you overextend. Not a single card will punish you.
I mean, you don't have full information about the deck, right? So what if there's Deathwing? Just like, if we're like, you know, you have to kind of live in these ridiculous worlds, right? Because he's so incredibly heavily favored to win this game from this position, having had that Ragnaros win the brawl in the position that it did, when Deathboose was obviously just so desperate to kill it, that you have to start inventing these weird niche worlds that you lose to. And one of those weird niche worlds is there's just a Deathwing in Deathboose's deck. But no, he knows the entire list because he went
you're right.
with them.
They won't.
No, because he Golden Monkey transformed 9 of his cards. One of those could have been a Deathwing.
Yes, that's true. 9 cards. Well, which is like 33% of the entire deck, so it's actually valid. Valid point. But it seems like that's GG. What can you do?
So he's going to get himself into revenge range here with the weapon attack, which means he can actually clear the board without taking an enormous amount of damage.
But you could have also attacked into the rag and then double revenge, right? And still have Grom?
But then you take, what, 4 additional damage in that spot?
Yeah, but doesn't matter?
I mean, potentially. You know, you're playing around a limited amount of burst from your opponent. The Living Roots have been used. One of the Moonfires has been used as well to activate that Arcane Giant. So maybe you just feel like you can get there if you don't take too much damage in that spot.
But at the same time, you still leave an option around to clear a Malygos.
Sure.
Because you have Revenge and a Grom in hand, that's 10 damage, and you have this one weapon. So if your opponent doesn't have a threat in his hand, and you can build up armor during that time.
Thomerio actually nourished himself into fatigue here, and I'm not sure what he was planning to pick up, because I can only think he felt like he had more burn to pair with Malygos left in the deck, and now he's potentially left himself in a pretty rotten spot because he's accelerated his own clock significantly here.
Okay, that is kind of weird. So you are not able to play the swipe the same turn when you play the Malygos. That means the Malygos will deal 6 damage burst during 1 turn. Iron Fort Portal is huge. It's huge because that can not only put him away out of the range of any kind of burst that can happen, but also just gives you a minion, a threat on board.
Speaking of Ironforge Portal, I think Ironforge Portal before armor power there, hero power is incorrect because you can get positive and negative effects from Inspire mechanics, but Murloc Knight, for example, is not relevant whatsoever. It's completely irrelevant to this match, whereas Spawn of Shadows dealing 4 additional damage to you, that could have been very, very important.
That's true.
The Shield Slam pickup Deathboose
makes a difference.
He has beaten the deck at this point. He's killed every minion there is to kill. And Thomerio is left hopelessly fatiguing. Look how much this means to him. He knows the job is done. He gets up and celebrates already. Ladies and gentlemen, your Nordic champion representing Sweden, the home team at this event. It's Deathboose, and he's a deserved winner from the play that we've seen today.
Definitely correct. Deathboose was playing, I would say, very efficiently in every single game we have seen it so far. And a small hiccup in this game when the brawl didn't go his way.
Yes.
But it's not up to him to decide what's the brawl result. So a very impressive performance from Deathboose. He was coming to this tournament as the favorite, and he actually took it.
Absolutely, great performance from him. He came into this with perhaps the strongest competitive pedigree, having a top 3 at GigaCon, that incredibly impressive 70% win rate we talked about. He vanquished his good friend and practice partner, Janetski from Finland, in the opening round of proceedings here today. And then the unknown, the dark horse, the Norwegian representative, Thomerio, was his opponent in the grand finals. And I think it's fair to say, in the end, he just had a little bit too much in terms of experience, meta knowledge, composure as well under pressure. He had a little bit too much for Thomerio in that spot. Okay,
and now we'll go to Shiver to just congratulate the winner and give him the prize. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lothar and Subtle, and indeed Deathboose. Congratulations. Now you can say this one. Now, you have a lot of Swedish fans here. I mean, everybody came running up the stage. Do you have anything to say to them?
But like, today, to them I've already told them a lot, but to the ones watching at home, I'm super grateful for watching and supporting me. Like without knowing that they would support me no matter win or defeat, I couldn't have made it, for sure. And thanks to my practice partners and teams, Krans GG.
Well, we are going to still have a proper winner's interview at the desk in about 30 seconds or so, so we'll be right back with the winner's interview. Welcome back to the Nordic Championship, and we have our Hearthstone champion, and it is a Swedish champion, as I'm sure a lot of you Swedes out here and also at home are appreciative of. Deathboose, congratulations again.
Thank you so much.
There were some grueling matches in there. It was a tough matches to watch.
Yeah.
And my question is about the first game you had, Control Warrior versus Control Warrior. That was, I mean, what was going through your head during that match?
So I knew in his deck he does not run Elise or Doomcaller.
Okay, you knew that in advance.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, it does, right? I thought it would look weird on how I played, but it was just because I had the information beforehand. But he played it out really well and took it out in the end by holding Cthulhu.
Would you have banned out Warrior because the previous series that he had, Warrior was actually banned out against him because the opponent knew, Spartacus knew, that he had such a strong Warrior?
I would never ban the Warrior.
Never ban a Warrior, okay.
Yeah, I think just shaman ban every single time, right? It's got to be done.
It is way more
It got
important.
more sense than that. But yeah, that game, did you ever consider, during that game in particular, you went like Tempo Doomsayer to flush the board, and then you had the opportunity to just like monkey with like 15 cards left in total or something. Did that ever cross your mind?
It crossed my mind, but I was actually disrespecting him as a player. I thought he would misplay and play the Cthulhu earlier, but I got punished by him holding the Cthulhu.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, it takes a big man to admit that, though, at least. So yeah, good job.
Yeah, that's actually true. Thomerio played that game very well. He knew what you were doing, so he actually countered you, and that's a good point. But unfortunately, in the next games, he kind of nerves took him back. You know, he was making small misplays that did end up costing him the game. But I wanted to ask, because that was an emotional moment, what did you think when the brawl just kind of make the game way more difficult for you, right?
Yeah, I was considering it, but at the same time, I knew that he played that matchup a bit wrong by wasting, like, he wasted 2 Living Roots and 1 Moonfire already. So I knew that I could possibly stall it out, and by Maligos wouldn't be that big of a threat.
Yeah, we were thinking about the same thing, but from your side, when you use the execute on a minion that could have maybe been killed in other ways, right? Maybe it was too early to use the execute. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it was probably too early. I was expecting to draw it earlier. To draw more answers sooner.
Yeah, okay, but you took it in the end.
Yeah, I did.
Indeed. I mean, you are the Swedish champion for the Nordic Championship here at Dreamhack Winter in Jönköping. And that means that the Hearthstone portion of today is over, and we are moving on to another game. That's right, we have 3 today. It's going to be CSGO. So get ready for the finals of the CSGO Nordic Championship, as the semifinals already played for that one. We'll be right back after a break, but for now, give it up to your Swedish champion of Hearthstone.